Kannagi, an anime from 2008. It starts with a little boy catching a spider, and unexpectedly someone touches him from behind. When he turns around and looks, it is a beautiful girl with blue hair. He is a little frightened, but the girl approaches him smiling and puts her hand on his head. After this encounter, she disappears into a gale, and the spider he had caught disappears with her. Since then, the little boy has never seen that girl again. Now the question remains whether the girl is actually a friend from his imagination or whether she really was real. His name, in fact, is Jean Mercuria. And we see him years later. He was in 2nd grade and part of the art club. His work is a wooden statue carved from the trunk of a sacred tree he calls himself that was recently cut down. He was really touched by the statue. The same tree from the place he met the girl years ago. When he finishes the statue he comes to tears because he remembers something very important to him. And when he finishes his statue he goes home. He notices that the statue he had left in his garden has taken root, and suddenly his statue starts to come to life, taking the form of a blue-haired girl similar to the same girl he had seen in the past. Supernormal. His first reaction is to touch a supernormal girl. The mysterious girl is apparently also surprised by her new form and begins to observe her hands. She thinks and tries to understand what was happening. It's all scared. And meanwhile he continues to stare at her with his mouth open. The girl approaches him and realizes that he seems frightened, so she puts her hand on his head and takes him into the house. And still confused, he starts asking her questions, and he asks her if she is the spirit of the tree. Then she gets angry that he is comparing her to the spirit. And she asks him why he took the guardian tree. He doesn't understand what's going on, so she introduces herself to him as the guardian goddess of the tree, and she explains that the tree was sacred and that was a place where a deity came down to earth and stayed in the form of trees that are called all living things were born from that deity, and now she took human form, so that was actually a goddess. Who knew that a young girl was actually a goddess? My God, what a mess. I asked him why she had disappeared that form. And he answered that it is as he had carved it out of wood. She doesn't understand anything. Then he mentions that it might be because the carving was made from the trunk of the sacred tree. At that moment she is in angry despair as well, for she finds out that the tree had been cut down not long ago. She becomes unresponsive, and as he tells her that he played in that place in his childhood, he asks her if they had ever met there in the past. But instead of answering, she gets very angry and starts to hit him, since she thought he had cut down the tree. Again he tries to ask if they had ever met, but she says she has no memory for this kind of thing, and after she stops screaming Nike starts to cry, because according to her, that place would be unprotected without her guardian and calamities would happen there. While Nadi is wailing, a bug crawls up her leg and naturally she gets burned. Then she starts to make a speech saying that impurities are hidden everywhere and that previously they were eliminated by the sacred tree. According to her, if a human were to touch that being he would be corrupted and easily the insect on top of her and throw it away. She doesn't understand anything and for some reason starts hitting it again. She is extremely saddened by the situation and Jean tries to console her. Then she decides that she needs to think a little. When she turns around he faces her and starts to get healed. He decides to turn on the television and the ship gets very curious and wants to watch it too. She is completely entertained by a program of magical girls. Then she starts to think about how she could eliminate the said impurities, being in a human form. The two of them go to buy some things and return to the place where the tree was, and Nag starts imitating the magical drawings trying to eliminate the impurities, which were actually just spiders. He obviously finds it all very strange, but when he realizes they have really disappeared. According to her, the explanation for this would be that it was only necessary to use the power of love and justice to eliminate impurities. She was very happy, and at this moment she decides to introduce herself better to him. Dim also did the same and introduced himself again. And when they shake hands, the same windstorm from years ago happens again. But she doesn't disappear and the two go home together. She then decides to live with Jim since he has the ability to protect her from impurities. He starts to think about it, and since he was somehow attracted to her, he doesn't think they could live together, but before he says anything, she mentions that she was counting on him, and he ends up rethinking everything. Jean talks to Nagi so that they can share the work, and after dinner she was so exhausted that she fell asleep lying on the floor, and again Jean looks at her with different eyes. He looks at her panties in the hamper and is embarrassed. And since she didn't have any more clothes, he had to buy them for her. When he gets home, she is wearing his clothes, and while he is taking a shower, the phone starts ringing and he is already in despair. He comes out of the bathroom naked, still all wet, and answers the phone. It was his classmate asking why he didn't go to school that day, but he said he'll explain later, and when he hangs up the phone he sends the and didn't answer the phone at all. The two get ready for bed and Nagi wishes Jean a good night. This is the beginning of a difficult housing period between A and a high school student. Since Jean is not used to the everyday life that people lead. That is the end of the first episode. An anime that has a very classic beginning. The anime has a 7.2 rating. In 1 is the same old story of the high school student who is forced to live with a cute girl who is not used to human life. The difference here is in the introduction. The Nagi arrives from a sculpture instead of falling from the sky.